Oh, I can't believe I have to talk about this, but I guess I have no choice. Hello everyone, my name is Lynx Recruit, and I'm going to be talking to you guys about the Trickster changes that have came out in Chucky's release. Without a better word, Trickster mains are not happy, myself included. And I'm going off on a little tangent here. This is off script, but we'll get onto the script in a minute here. Behavior, I understand what you guys were doing, and I respect you guys. I absolutely adore you guys with all my heart. I know you people are trying your hardest to appease to everyone, but these changes were not it. They were terrible, negligent, and very inconsiderate to the Trickster player base, and that is about as best as I could possibly describe it. So, without getting into major details, let's get into the script. So before we get anywhere, let's start with what they did to Trickster in the first place. Back when the chapter PTB was announced, we were revealed changes to the Trickster that were done to improve the experience on both sides, and I quote, "We're aiming to address points of frustrations for both sides." Alongside this, the changes were done in a manner that were done to improve him. So technically, it was a buff. Most importantly, buffing his throw speed to 4 knives a second, at the cost of making his laceration back to 8 knives and its laceration decay state back to the original release number of 10 seconds. Small editor's note here, but credit to Gonzo for correcting me here. Trickster's original laceration decay was actually 15 seconds and it was later buffed to 20, so apologies there, but still, the decision makes no sense. And before I forget to mention, alongside the changes, main event was made more common at 6 charges, but came at the cost of it not being active for as long, as well as having a longer cooldown period. At first, this sounded wonderful, but without passing unfair judgment, as the criticism was very much fair, content creators had the unintended side effect of painting the changes in a more negative light than they actually were. Yes, the Death Throws compilation plus the new Fizz Spin Soda was certainly a broken combination, that much is true, and I will not try to say it wasn't, but to compare what Trickster's kit offered if you excluded it left much to be desired. The content space mostly causes a herd mentality where most people who don't want to experience it for themselves will immediately assume that their content creator called it problematic, therefore it must be problematic. At least, that's how I see it from my perspective. Thus is why I say it's unattended. Though, I do agree some of the changes should not have made it to live, which they didn't, and I'm not trying to argue it is the content space's fault, and it is their duty to cover stuff that changes and showcase what is wrong. I see it as most people should try it for themselves rather than agreeing with a content creator if they had not tried it or experienced it for themselves. Additionally, Behavior made the baffling decision to include these game-changing changes for Trickster alongside the testing of Chucky. As to why they bothered to do this, I don't know, and I doubt many will too, as these changes went completely unnoticed due to the need of wanting to experiment with Chucky as well as him being, well, obviously, brand new. I can't figure out the reasoning as to why Behavior did this, and it confuses me to high hell. As is par for the course, this fairly injustifiably resulted in Trickster being reapproached before the release. But then the changes were not what Trickster players were expecting. Trickster had his throw rate nerfed to 3 knives a second. Death Throws was understandably nerfed, that much I won't try to defend, as it made the new Trickster too oppressive. At least in this iteration of him, of course. But what baffled everyone is the mechanic they newly added to the combo system that I didn't mention because it did very little to help main event, and it, of all things, got add-ons. The Fizz Spin Soda and the Autograph, which previously reduced the knives needed for main event to trigger, were changed to increase the period at which the combo period lasted before triggering the score event, which was completely and utterly baffling to read through. The only reason why this was done was to give 8 additional seconds. If I had wanted 8 additional seconds, I would use the tequila. Alongside these changes, the Eerie Photo Card got nerfed to lose its speed bonus upon injuring a survivor, which I don't think I had seen anybody complain about the add-on once, because it's an extremely underwhelming add-on and continues to push the soon-to-be haste meta. We'll soon be entering later down the line. I'm calling it, folks. We'll be seeing 110 killers going to stupid speeds and survivors running at Mach 5. Let's go. As I had said earlier, the Death Throws compilation was officially put in its coffin. I bet Wesek was absolutely crying when this happened. Feel ya. I feel ya. I may have hated the add-on because I've never been accurate, but they absolutely massacred the add-on, changing it from reloading during main event to revealing the aura of survivors hit by main event for 6 seconds. Now, to be fair to Behavior, we can absolutely understand why these changes were made. Death throws increased the PTB Trickster's lethality tenfold, to a point that literally being found by him meant he had no reason to ever stop chasing you, so long as he could keep 100% uptime of his main event. Behavior has also been trying to move away from exposed add-ons, as they understandably break the flow of the game. The only ones that remain are, mostly because Behavior hasn't gotten to them yet, and some are only rewarding you with exposed when specific requirements are met. This resulted in the culmination of most of Trickster's add-ons that were done for variety, absolutely tanking in effectiveness and usefulness due to these changes. So for example, the diamond cufflinks now were completely useless because you had to now hit 8 knives in order to see the aura. The add-ons that applied about 0.5% laceration under specific requirements were now completely worthless and a waste of an add-on slot because they were now slower and now more inefficient due to Trickster still having 44 knives. This is why I now stand by the perspective that Dead by Daylight had now just given Trickster the twins treatment. Let's get into that. Now, it's no secret nobody liked Trickster. In fact, I bet most people who begged for these changes are absolutely jumping in joy. However, I'm not going to sit here and say why I hate the changes as a Trickster main. I'm going to say why I hate the changes and say they suck for both sides and what the consequences of these changes will do. Survivors had previously stated they did not like playing against Trickster because he was unloopable, to which I say, that is a complete and utter bold-faced lie. Trickster without a doubt is a loopable and avoidable killer. However, the Trickster of old punished survivors, and I say this, punished survivors for bad positioning and looping pallets he could throw over the traditional way. Trickster can be looped. You had to unfortunately play against him in a way that not many liked. You had one of two options: waste a high wall pallet, which were Trickster's nightmare, or loop a pallet he could throw over with the intent of trying to make him waste as many knives as possible. People had seemed to forget that Trickster of old was 110, meaning so long as you had mid to long range distance on him, there was nothing he could do besides catch up. As long as his blades were at long range, they could be avoided. These changes also have the unintended side effect of reverting Trickster to his released state back in 4.6.0. The only difference being he's 4.6, has a 32 meter tear radius with an irrelevant 40 meter lullaby, and lastly, having no blade recoil. Behavior had essentially removed all the changes that were made from Trickster over time because they knew 8 knives to injure and down was statistically slower. Even if you added in his throw ramp up into the equation, it was still statistically slower. Behavior had completely and unintentionally removed any and all potential skill expression Trickster and survivors could have between both sides, while absolutely doing nothing to address his pain points. Although most Trickster mains do not agree with me when I say this, I still stand by the fact the problem for Trickster for the survivor players is the maps and the map dependency they have to go through that decides whether they will have an easier time or a rough time against the Trickster. Silent Hill? You're fucked. Hawkins? You stand a chance unless the doors spawn poorly or if the Trickster has trick blades. Literally any map where 80% of pallet spawns are thorough overable, you might as well just be dead on the spot. Trickster is a killer that is unfortunately in a very unique spot where I would argue it is impossible to balance him because he's either unbearable to play for one side or fun for the other. The team at Behavior had completely and utterly missed the ball despite picturing and treating this as this tweak as a buff and a way to address frustrations from both sides, when all they did was add more frustration for the Trickster side while making him unbearably easy to go against for survivors. There is already countless tweets going on from Trickster mains showing how little survivors care about being hit by his blades now, which is exactly what happened with launch Trickster. This is why having 6 blades to injure and down was a must, because 8 is too safe of a number. Even more so now that his throw rate has been completely gutted and main event is weaker than it has ever been. Also, For the survivors trying to defend these changes with the 115 excuse, 115% is not as big as you guys make it out to be. When you have to consider the fact the man gets hit with fucking cinder blocks on his feet anytime he dares use his knives, which he has to remain in for prolonged periods if he wants to injure you. As a person who plays both sides, I've never had any issue playing against Trickster because, surprise, surprise, taking time to actually play the killer rather than using your preconceived biases about the killers as a survivor main gives you an idea of how to play against the Trickster. Survivor mains and a whole lot more had the balls to speak up and admit these changes were bad as well, while the other ones who are so far up their preconceived biases of what is and what is not strong are insistent that Trickster was overpowered and unfun, when there are objectively better anti-loop killers that do exactly what he does, but better. Behavior's insistence to make main event more often is completely missing what Trickster mains have stated for years. Main event is completely useless, and the situations it could be used in are limited because of how the thing is programmed and how it's designed. Making it more common is practically shoving it down our throats, despite it being shorter and way weaker. Yes, a lot of Trickster mains used it as a down securer, so did I, but I never minded it being rarer to obtain as it forced Trickster mains to use their brains. Shocker, right? On a more serious note, Trickster was one of the few killers that kept me coming back to Dead by Daylight because he was both my casual and chill killer. Any other killer never appealed to me. I didn't care he was K-pop inspired. I didn't care about his design. I just found him fun and funny knife go brr. But so much of what made me enjoy Trickster has been removed due to balance decisions so hard to conceive what was going through their minds, it makes me struggle to launch DBD and play it. Behavior, again, I see what you were aiming to do with these changes, and you had something. But jumping the gun and releasing him like this was one of the worst decisions you've ever made in a long while. You've had such a positive track record, you've had possibly one of the best killer releases, in my opinion, quite a while, but you've absolutely butchered my main and removed everything that I enjoyed from him. Survivors have stated time and time again they hate playing against Nurse and Blight, but the more and more behavior continues to make balanced decisions this horrendously bad, the more likely you are to encounter these killers and the more likely you are to experience them. To which I present this simple question: which is it? Would you rather keep a frustrating killer and allow behavior to continue to tweak them to improve them over time, or bitch and moan until they ruin the killer and get more blights and nurses as a result? I know most people would rather say they would have a nurse or a blight over the Trickster, but I know that's a complete and utter lie, because the amount of bitching I've heard about these killers in particular makes Trickster's complaints look like a joke in comparison. I don't say this lightly, but if you are genuinely struggling against Trickster before and now, you quite literally just have a skill issue at this point. There is no excuse anymore. And I don't want to hear any more complaints related to this killer. However, I've spoken on enough, I've given the rundown, and I've told you what they did to him, and I've spoke about why I hated the changes. I've been Lynx Recruit, I'm gonna go cry myself to sleep, but most importantly, have a wonderful day, and stay safe.